Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land, and welcome to DC Fans United. So today I'm happy to be talking to the great part of the creative team for the new IndieGoGo book, Charger. I'm joined by Wes and Troy, who are the writer and artist, respectively. Unfortunately, the colorist couldn't make it because her country, it's really late there. So I'm really glad to be talking to these two guys, and I'm also joined by my friends Ninja and Hardcopy. How are you guys all doing today?
Yo.
I'm doing great. Just happy to be here. I mean, this is my second stream promoting the book after Sportman Studios, and now you guys. Thank you guys for having myself and Troy on.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I've been wanting to talk to you guys for a while. It ended up getting postponed last time, so I was really glad we could do it today.
I guess we all had, we both kind of admitted we had some personal issues that kind of cropped up, so it wouldn't have been a good idea to do it that night. And then I think it was also like Tristan couldn't make it or something like that.
Yeah, and unfortunately she couldn't make it this time either, but it's all good. We got Hardcopy and Ninja here with us, so we got a good crew. So since I've got you here, I don't know if you or Troy want to start off, but just tell us anything and everything about Charger. Wes?
Well, assuming I don't robot out, Charger is a very back to basics superhero comic book. One thing I did notice growing up, and especially here in Canada, when a lot of people are getting into comics, they always wanted to do kind of some book that was kind of artsy fartsy and kind of just, didn't really land in the traditional comic book medium. That is to say, they weren't interested in doing the big two, the superhero genre. And it was increasingly frustrating. It's like, what? So the only way you could do superheroes or be interested in comics is if you read DC or Marvel. And this is long before I learned about the superhero trademark joke. But when that happened, I was just I saw this book that because I created Charger when I was in freshman year of high school. So this was like 13 years ago. And when I saw this, that started when I actually saw in my high school library, there was a bookshelf just full of comic books. And yeah, you had your usuals like Superman, Spider-Man, and Batman and all this other stuff. But then I saw this book called Invincible by Kirkman on Image Comics. And I went, wait a minute, this isn't in DC or Marvel. So I read it and I loved it. And I went, well, he doesn't need freaking, DC or Marvel to put out a fucking superhero book. So why can't I? So I made a character and worked on it. And then a couple years kind of forgot about it. Then a couple years later in college, I was doing a course that specialized in comics. And it was done by, and my instructor was Willow Dawson, who is an indie artist in her own right. She does illustrations for mostly children's books now, but back then she also did comics. And I think she still does. But anyways, back on point. So she said you had to come up with this, pull out this project, and then I remembered Charger, and I pulled it out of mothballs and wrote a script for it, and then I just continued to refine it, hopefully trying to find an artist to little to no success. Again, very few people want to do superhero comics for a reasonable price, and that kind of was always difficult to find that balance until I found Troy, and ever since then, over the last year or so, we have been working on the project. Intermittently, admittedly, until like the last couple months where it just went full tilt and the campaign went live.
Wow, I didn't realize you guys had been working on it for quite that long.
Well, actually, I commissioned a cover poster art piece, which is the one that gets used a lot from him years ago, and that's actually the one that started the whole kind of thing. Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah. So I'd say last year about this time. I got commissioned on that cover, banged it out. Eventually, I'd want to say probably around the summer, he hit me back up again and was like, are you possibly interested in going in? And, I gave him gave him some rates. We worked some things out, and I ended up getting on board.
And yeah, it's funny because you talked about, I remember when you were on your Twitter feed, you mentioned how it was like your first major project where you were doing like a lot of background work.
Yes, lots of background. See, when it comes to like, let's say Juan Pool is a story about very specific dialogue that you have to pay attention to. So I tend to focus more on the characters in the panel than the background, because more likely than not, they're going to get covered by the dialogue. When you're working with something like this, it's a little, the cinematography is completely different. If you're having a fight in the middle of the air, it's not close in. There's a lot of space. And when you're dealing with a big metropolitan city, all them buildings are going to show up. You know what I mean? Unless they're at such a high altitude, and that's just boring. That's Dragon Ball Z at that point.
Yeah. Although they can both fly. But actually, it was also funny because that's something that cropped up when I was writing the book, and you're going to see this a lot in my action scenes, is that in superhero movies and in superhero comic books, in the middle of a fight scene, they're throwing punches and they're still talking. It's like, you wouldn't be talking if you're throwing a punch. And superhero movies, obviously, for the most part, cut out the quippy dialogue out of fight scenes, or even like the villain's narration. They do their action, then they talk. You know what I mean? Where it's like, So I kind of wanted to get back. I wanted to show more of the artwork and the visual kind of representation of it when I was just writing the page. So I kind of, when they were fighting, I wanted to nix the dialogue as much as possible, unless it made sense for them to speak. And the only kind of dialogue that's there would be like narration captions, which is completely different.
Yeah.
So, because that's in your head versus like what's going on the page.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. That's a real common trope that's probably overdone in comics, is they're talking while they're fighting, and it's just like, how is that even possible, or why would you do that?
Well, Spider-Man does it all the time.
Yeah, but Spider-Man's typically, when he's doing it mid-fight, he's bouncing around like a flea. It's like when he's, but it's the supervillains who do it, or just really bad when they're monologuing their big evil plan.
Yeah,
it's like. But I guess I could talk about the plot of Charger, because I know actually you guys support the project there. I can't tell how many people are in the chat right now, but
6,
because my computer's being weird. But the project just shows the fight scene. That fight scene is the opening of the book, but at the same time, it's actually a flash forward, because that actually takes place in issue 7, which I have written but still have to give to Troy. Because it's actually a sequence, because I realized, because I was very inspired by Ultimate Spider-Man in the early run, and in Ultimate Spider-Man, he doesn't get the costume until he doesn't become Spider-Man until about issue 7. And I went, yeah. And when I was and then I said, you don't really see the suit until issue 4. So I said, well, I need the suit in the first issue. So I cut it. I wrote a scene that takes place in the middle of issue 7, and then just transplanted it into issue 1. And that was that. Although the narration and dialogue is different, well, for the most part. And the plot is actually it's a high school, so it's a high school teen superhero, much like Ultimate Spider-Man. And it's a back to basics superhero comic. It's about a character named Matt McCutchin, who was the son of a champion race car driver and a Hollywood starlet, who kind of, was a up-and-coming, rising A-lister kind of thing. So they were living the life. And then Matt lost his father in a racing accident at a young age. And then when that happened, his widow, Matt's mother, sent basically squandered their family fortune through drunken partying, basically pulled a full-on Lindsay Lohan. And they're now living in suburban squalor 8 years later. She sent Matt's younger brother away to live with his aunt and uncle so he could live a happy life, but she couldn't live with the idea of two of them, of losing both of them. So she kept Matt and dragged him around like a spare piece of used luggage. So they don't exactly have a great relationship. And on top of that, he's picked on at school for being, the son of a Lindsay Lohan type. I mean, what would that be like? You know what I mean? So, and his only two friends are these two punk rock people, Rachel Reed and Mike Muhammad. And the two of them are, they're all kind of rejects. They're all kind of ostracized. And they have a band together, the Black Static. That is until one of the couple of the bullies go too far and they cause a freak accident during one of their little brawls and leave Matt in a coma for 6 months.
Uh-oh.
That happens. He wakes up. He's confused. He's in pain. He doesn't know what the hell's going on. And the bullies decide to say, screw it. And they try to pick on the cripple now. And then all of a sudden he gets electric superpowers. Like, what the hell? And he then starts using them for, getting back at the people who wronged him or wronged other people. Like, he's a punk rocker, so punk rockers are going to make fun of the in crowd. And so he kind of takes that to the nth degree, at least until he has a call to action, like most heroes. And in this case, it was a racer dying in a similar fashion to how his father died. And so he goes to see what the hell happened. And that ends up leading him on the path to becoming a superhero. And when he becomes a superhero, he gets noticed by this media mogul, who actually is the person he's fighting in the campaign, who turns out to be a cyborg, but we don't know that yet. And he sponsors him and overnight turns him into a Justin Bieber type, like an instant celebrity. And then he starts to, the lines between, his counterculture and the in crowd start to blur. And that, the people who used to rag on him are now considering him cool. And the people he used to be friends with are now considering his alter ego a piece of shit because, he's the in crowd. And he's got to really learn the difference between that and that the price of fame. And over the course of the series, he learns that, not just in the first couple of issues, but then as various villains come along to kind of get their due, so to speak.
So what are his powers exactly? Like, what's his power set?
I describe Charger as essentially the electric Superman.
Like electric blue Superman?
No, like not really, because I believe it or not, I actually never read the Superman Blue issues in their entirety, so I don't know what Superman Blue was fully capable of. But I looked at Superman's powers and just kind of gave them an electric spin. So he's got flight. Okay. He's got flight. He's got super speed. He's got superhuman strength, but only in contact with metallic objects. So if the object is made of metal, no matter how heavy it is, he'll lift it without any issue. But if it's not made of metal, like say it's made of concrete or plastic or whatever, nothing. He's got average strength of a teenager. So,
does it matter what kind of metal it is? Like
no,
steel?
It could be anything. Just if it's metallic, he can use it.
Interesting.
And then so he can fire lightning bolts from his bare hands, but although he doesn't learn that till later on, he typically charges up his fists to be like tasers or for thunder punching or just, grabbing someone and dropping them like a stun gun. He's got super hearing, but only over like radio wave and then later on satellite frequencies. So example, if you're talking on your phone or here on a live stream, he can hear this conversation from miles away. But even if he's not on a computer. However, if you're talking to your buddy in real life across the way about whatever, he can't hear it. And then I think he's got semi-invulnerability, so he's not completely invulnerable. I mean, you're going to see his costume's in tatters. He's getting his ass kicked, but as you can see, he's still going through buildings into a freight liner, all this stuff, and he's still alive. So clearly, he can take a punch.
Could he survive being shot?
Oh yeah, like like bullets will just ricochet off him. Although he still reacts to it. It's like ow, ow. It's like getting hit with like if you were getting whacked with a fly swatter. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not gonna pierce your skin, but it's gonna hurt. You know what I mean? It's like because very very micro like subtle static barriers pop up whenever he gets hit. So it's like a static cling that causes him to repulse. So that's why it'll bounce off of him, but it won't actually get through, but he'll still feel that's like zip, You ever had like static cling where you build up enough static, you touch something and you shock yourself?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what it is. Very similar.
Would it be an actual energy field around him then?
I did write a couple.
I had a good question.
I did write a couple of panels where you can actually visibly see it, but as Troy has done so far, we've never actually shown that. So that's actually at the discretion of Troy.
Oh, okay. Sorry, go ahead, Ninja.
Oh, I was going to say, does he like absorb the kinetic energy at all? Like
he absorbs all to get the source of his powers, similar to Superman, is just instead of just solar radiation, it's ambient energy, so kinetic energy, subtle in small enough doses, nuclear energy. It's like any kind of energy, he'll just absorb it and back into his powers and redistribute it. The reason he doesn't turn into like Captain Atom or something like that is because his body naturally expends so much of it that it just doesn't make a difference.
So could he like tap into, say, tear the power lines down and like use that as like a real boost
Oh
Just
yeah,
like
like
get
that'll,
off.
that'll give him a supercharge, and he could fire like a giant lightning beam, like just kind of like a hyper beam of electricity.
Oh, that's kind of cool, man.
So yeah, because he absorbs. So he's kind of like he's a living generator / battery, but he also is constantly absorbing. He cannot, however, manipulate. You know, like how Static Shock was able to fire a lightning blast and then manipulate like a metal object around him.
Yeah.
He can't do that necessarily, but he so that's kind of, he can't manipulate electricity like objects like that or electric currents. He's basically similar to Superman. You got to think of like Superman in terms of what he can do. And his last ability, I think the one I didn't mention, was his electrovision, where he can focus and he can see electric currents flowing through solid objects or even people.
Oh,
So,
that's
example,
cool.
if your cell phone's turned on in your pocket and you're recording something, he'll know that your cell phone's turned on in your pocket. You know, he can also garble his voice with enough static that way you can't tell over a, unless you spent like 4chan weaponized autism levels, obscene levels of just unscrambling it, you'd never figure out it's his voice over, like if you were trekking through the phone, say like like any kind of CRA intelligence or whatever, it'd be very difficult for them to track it.
Does he have electricity breath?
No, he can't like breathe electricity, but he can garble his voice. He can make his voice sound incredibly staticky. That way it's very difficult to unscramble it because he's naturally speaking like that. It's not like his voice is going through a filter. That's actually what sounds like. It's like, is he using a filter? It's like, no, that's actually how he's talking.
Can he turn it off when he's not the superhero?
Oh yeah, he can turn. It's a trick. So example, I could do this and then butcher a British accent on the drop of a hat. Like I could talk like this and sound like a piece of shit, right? It's kind of like doing that. If he literally he just willingly changes his it's like changing your accent basically. So him going through his normal speaking voice to like a staticky voice is like changing your accent. So that's how he does it.
That's interesting.
But I think that just runs through the list of his powers. But like I said, I was very much inspired by the Ultimate Spider-Man, but I was also inspired by a lot of the music of the time I was growing up, because this is like the mid 2000s. So like a lot of the punk revival, the emo, the post-hardcore, that kind of stuff. All that was coming in at that time. And so, he's in a rock band, he plays bass, his band members are his best friends. And so I was inspired by the manga by Harold Sakuishi, Beck, Mongolian Chop Squad, which is where a kid joins a rock band.
Beck.
And they become the next big thing basically over the course of like 37 volumes. So that was kind of what I was. So as much as Spider-Man resonated with me, I also was inspired by the music scene. So I wanted to have his life as a musician, a traveling musician, and a high schooler growing up as just as important as him, punching a supervillain through a wall. I didn't want to just kind of do one or the other, where there are a lot of stories that kind of focus on one element of the character. And I think that was a lot of things that are, even current superhero books, they focus on like one aspect of a character, and it's very kind of one note.
Yeah. It's good with any character, I think, to have more to them than just surface level traits.
Yep.
So what would happen if he fell into a large body of water like a lake?
Oh, that was actually one of his two weaknesses. Insulators like rubber and stuff like that, they'll slow him down, but they won't stop him outright, because you can eventually burn through rubber.
Mm-hmm.
But grounded water is his kryptonite. So basically, he can swim, he can shower, he can bathe just like any other human being. But if he were to use his abilities while he's submerged or in grounded water, the power would cause a feedback and shock not only everything that's in the water, but himself as well. It would cause a feedback, and he would actually short himself out and eventually kill himself.
That's a problem.
Mm-hmm. So his reaction to it is very much identical to Superman reacting to kryptonite.
Oh, okay.
He just drops.
Interesting. I imagine that'll come into play. Be a pretty big
yes.
plot point.
Yeah, what's going to happen when his girlfriend asks him to go skinny dipping?
Again, he can swim and bathe and skinny dip like anyone else. He just can't use his powers while he's doing it.
Interesting.
So he can that, because it's like, that would be kind of gross. I mean, the guy can never shower for the rest of his life. Is that where you're going at?
Yeah, that's his weakness.
It's like, oh God. And it's funny because I created a villain who actually, his whole thing is that he can turn into a cloud of just foul stench that could literally turn anywhere from just being ranked to straight up poison.
There you go.
No, that's actually one of the bullies, actually. I created the bullies. Some of the bullies are, there are like 3 of them, and then there's a 4th later. But I wanted to kind of make them my villainous parody of the Fantastic Four.
Oh, cool.
But at the same time, they're also a parody of the Ghostly Trio and Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Okay.
So, example, the bully, the lead bully, Brandon, he eventually becomes Stretch, and he's also, obviously he's a parody of Stretch, but he's also a parody of Mr. Fantastic. And instead of being the world's smartest man, he's the world's biggest dumbass, you know? So I wanted him to kind of, but he's very charismatic. That's why people still like him and still deal with his shit, even though he's a thundering dumbass, you know? Like, you idiot kind of thing, you know what I mean? And he just has a serious hate boner for Matt McCutchin because, he likes to make fun of, his mother, and his mother was basically Lindsay Lohan, right? So what do? You just pick on that incessantly. So he just keeps doing it and just keeps aggravating. And then, of course, Matt turns around and beats the crap out of him. But that's kind of how it works. But he also eventually gains the ability to turn. He's basically turns into rubber. He can stretch. So he's resistant to Charger's lightning abilities. So, but he can stretch just like Mr. Fantastic. He can do all those horrible things. His immediate peon, his Ben Grimm, if you will, Fatso, is Daniel. And he's a chronic yes man. Like, he's a there's not much of a brain behind him either, but he's turns essentially into the Blob in terms of his powers eventually, because he's just a fat fuck. He's a fat, greasy fuck, and he's dumb as a rock. Bulletproof, all that other stuff, and just Charger can't whack him he can't whack him and send him like flying 200 feet. He'll just absorb it with his fat. Although that comes later. And then the last one is Stinky, or Jose. And Jose is smarter than the both of them, but he's only friends with them because they would bully him too. So it's like, pick your poison. So it's like, do you want to be the bully or the bullied? You know what I mean? But the thing is, but he also just, every time he walks in a room, he's just the most rank and foul smelling thing you've ever smelled in your life. It's like, does this guy even shower? You know what I mean? And his ability is that he eventually learns how to turn into the said cloud. The 4th member is Brandon's sister, Brittany, who actually was originally she was the queen, the high school queen bee, the ultimate preppy bitch. She was Regina in Mean Girls, right? And at least until a sexting scandal happened, and she got the short end of the stick, and so she drove her car off a cliff. However, the cliff was loaded with the substance that I explained that gives people their superpowers, called Isotope X. And Isotope X is actually a chemical waste product. It's garbage. It's literally just garbage that, Mercury Industries made, and they had to get rid of it because they just make so much of it, making their various cybernetic projects. So they had to get rid of it. Little did they realize that they were creating the means to get superpowers. So when you are exposed to the stuff and you suffer the shock of a very, very violent death, so driving your car off a cliff, getting struck by lightning, shooting yourself in the head, getting impaled, etc., etc., you absorb the traits of whatever you happen to be, but you absorb the worst traits of yourself, but also whatever is immediately in your vicinity. So in Charter's case, he was struck by lightning, so he absorbs the energy of electricity. Kind of goes without saying. So, and he also becomes the ultimate paragon of trying to protect and help others. So his powers are reminiscent of Superman, even if they're lightning themed.
So the traits that are their most defined come out, or their worst traits come out?
Their best or their worst traits. So it's in the words of Erskine in First Avenger: good men become great, bad become worse.
Oh, okay, cool.
And that's kind of how they view it. But back to Brittany, the 4th one, she was the queen bee. She drove her car off a cliff, but the cliff was also loaded with Isotope X because she saw herself as nothing but a phantom, a ghost, right, in the machine. So it's like she just felt like less than human. So what happens? Her body is still was found weeks later at the bottom of the gorge, dead, but she's still walking around. She's like, she just got up and kept walking. So she's literally a ghost, a phantom, you know? But she doesn't, you know, but she still can take on a humanoid form. Like, she can still become physical if she so desires. But she has flight, invisibility, and she can reflect light to shoot like beams of like light that can blind people or even hurt them if they're not careful, you know? So, but unlike that, if the other three are the ghostly trio, she's Casper the Friendly Ghost. Because after death, she actually turns out is a fangirl of Charger's. And she actually believes in what he's doing, but she only fights him because she puts her family first, even if said family is a complete fucking moron. In that case, being her brother. It's like, he's an idiot, but he's family. That's kind of her logic. So she doesn't want to fight Charger. She just has to out of obligation to her family.
Okay. Interesting.
Which actually brings us to the villain you actually see in the IndieGoGo campaign. If you guys want to click on it and back it, if you like what you hear. Mercury. Jim Mercer. He's kind of, well, to be blunt, he's an evil Tony Stark. Except that instead of wearing the Iron Man suit, he put the Iron Man suit in his body.
Okay.
But I don't mean like the edge where it just kind of comes through the pores of his skin and pops out. No, he's a Terminator. He's a futurist who always tried to seek, you know, the world's greatest technology, newest prophets, new frontiers, new tomorrow, new civilizations to boldly go where no one has gone before. Unfortunately, that also meant that you had to break a few eggs along the way, and he didn't care who had to die so long as he got his advancement. So, slave labor, you know, all the other horrible shit that you could think of. This guy has done, but he also did. But he's a fair man. He wasn't unwilling to let other people die if he wasn't prepared to do it himself. Hence why he put the cybernetics in his body.
Hey guys, I kind of got to dip out now. I only had about a half hour.
Sorry, Troy. Sorry for taking up that time. We should have let you talk more.
Yeah. I know. But I got to get back to this end of things. Thank you so much for having me, though.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
We should set something else up. So I can come back to the channel again.
Yep. Because we'd like to talk more about the art, especially when more artwork comes out, which is coming soon, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And we'll be on for a while if you want to come back in, Troy.
All right, guys.
Hey, chat you later, Troy.
All right, take it easy.
Yeah.
Cool.
Any other questions you might want to ask?
Oh yeah, for sure. I had a couple I was thinking of, but did you guys have any first? Hard copy or Ninja?
Yeah, I've got the girl, the sister. She's got interesting power set, but the whole texting thing, I thought that would come into play because she got done by texting and all that. I thought maybe she can control phones or can go into the internet.
I thought about that. I thought about that, but then I realized I was aping on another character I created called the Critic. And the Critic. Okay. Now, I created this character long before Comicsgate or any kind of, whatever drama you can insert here before the Twitter wars began. Like, a lot of these characters were made like over 10 years ago. In fact, the Critic was created as a parody of the Nostalgia Critic, Doug Walker. Because I loved the outrage and how he loses his collective shit over the most stupidest and mundane of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, what if this guy had the ability to tap into technology and not only shotgun everything that's in said technology over the internet for all to see, but also he can turn that technology, so anything from a cell phone to a TV to a computer to a billboard, an electronic billboard, into a transformer and actually use it as a physical robot to attack Charger while he's live streaming it for his audience. And obviously the audience he has garnered hate Charger. So, and the worst thing is the Charger has to watch on the live streams as they break down because his costume can tap into the internet. So he's literally watching the live stream, literally cheering on his death.
So the guy can interfere with people's electronics and force them to watch things.
Yeah, basically, he's basically making him watch his own death. It's like, Jesus Christ. That's kind of perverse. But, and like I said, this is long before diversity in comics or whatever, you know, the Riley Dennis's or whatever YouTube channel you could think of had become a thing. So a lot of, and I realized that when I was writing, when I went back and revisited a lot of my work, I was looking at it, this was written 10 years ago. And I'm looking at it going, dude, fuck me. I didn't realize how relevant some of these characters would become. Like, for example, Charger's major love interest, Rachel Reed. Rachel Reed, I described. Now, I wish Troy had not left because he really likes this character. Because Rachel is his best friend and the character and the band, the Black Statics, lead guitarist and lead singer. But I describe her as what happens when you take Mary Jane Watson and have her raid Brody Dahl's closet from the Distillers. So she's like a rock star, very, strong in her beliefs. She's, bisexual. She's got all these, the traits of like, the strong, independent women kind of shenanigans. But I created that character long before these things became, things that typically some of your audience would not necessarily appreciate. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So, but on top to compound this in, I wanted an idea that I wanted her to not just be Mary Jane, but I also wanted her to be J. Jonah Jameson. And because she's the punk rock chick, she's anti-establishment, anti kind of, she's, that's who anti-corporate, that kind of individual. So I thought, well, what if she loved Matt McCutchin as an individual? Because, they're best friends, they get along, boyfriend, girlfriend, all that stuff. But she despises the very idea of Charger, and that's why Matt can never tell his friends that he's actually the superhero. Because teenagers, even to this day, are very cutthroat. I mean, we all were teenagers once. We all know how friendships were tenuous at best. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like you could literally, all it takes is like one little, shit show or one big secret, and all of a sudden you guys aren't speaking anymore. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's like that with adults sometimes too.
Oh yeah. So I thought, well, that was the reason why I needed a reason why he would keep his identity a secret beyond the government's going to try to kidnap you and turn me into a lab rat.
Hey, that's a good reason too.
Actually, that's the reason I mentioned in issue 2. He actually says that in the narration. I've seen that movie before. I know where it goes.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and also he actually also doesn't want his mother to know, because he and his mother have an antagonistic relationship with each other. I wanted it to be the opposite wherever I could. I wanted it to be the opposite of Peter Parker. Because Peter Parker and Aunt May have a loving relationship after losing Uncle Ben. I wanted Matt and his mother, Terry, to have an antagonistic relationship. Like, she is strict with him because she believes that if she raises him to be a decent human being, then she will be redeemed for all of her horrible things and all the horrible shit that she's done to him over the years. So she's strict, she's stern, she'll take the piss out of him, and she'll insult him and treat him like crap. But she thinks that she's doing the right thing. In reality, but Matt doesn't see it that way. He sees just nothing but abuse and neglect. So he basically just despises her.
So she's not behind him wanting she's not behind him becoming famous.
Well, actually, she has no idea. He kept it a secret.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he keeps the mask on. So, like, they were. Thing is, much like I wanted to kind of subvert the trope of like, how does a costume character, without revealing their identity, get all these corporate sponsors? Well, I thought about that and I went, what if the CEO was just that much of an egotistical maniac that he would actually be meta and say that's like, yeah, I know that you're supposed to reveal your identity, but I kind of want you now. So I'm just going to forego that because he just wants to use him as a smokescreen for the fact that he's kind of an evil prick. It's like, hey guys, no, hey, look at this shiny new toy. You see, we're doing like shady back deals in the behind the scenes.
Yeah,
that's almost the kind of I just realized that's kind of a commentary on Disney these days.
That's true.
Oh shit. When you catch your own work, literally just taking the piss out of things, you don't even realize they're getting the piss taken out of them.
Oh yeah, they say art imitates life, and
yeah, but like I said, it's weird because I wrote this 10 years ago, so it's like,
oh,
I wrote these 10 years ago, and the fact that they're relevant today is like, the hell. But yeah, back to Rachel, as I've got a little bit of ADD right now, apparently. Rachel loves Matt, hates Charger, and so she actually literally actively will write songs about how much she hates him. Kind of the typical, which I now realize is the typical you know, Orange Man bad, I hate Donald Trump, that kind of stuff that fits today. I just didn't realize it at the time that I would be writing something that 10 years later would be relevant. So she starts a YouTube channel. She rags on him, just every opportunity just to hate the guy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the great irony is that the man that she loves is actually the guy that she hates. So I kind of wanted that dynamic, and I wanted to that's kind of another thing with electricity. Like electricity is very, you know, it's polarizing, right? So example, you know, if Matt's out of costume, the people he associates with, the punk rocks, the outcasts, they all like him. They don't like Charger. But if he's Charger, the people he doesn't like, the popular crowd, if you will, they like him. Go figure.
Yeah, it kind of switched, right?
Yeah. It's kind it's the dynamic flips.
These guys they've all died, right?
Every character who's gotten powers suffered a death, but they were resurrected because of the isotope. So
they're alive again.
Yeah, they're alive again. They're not actually, but they suffered actually, because brain death doesn't occur until 3 minutes after physical death. So within that 3 minute span, they're still technically dead. They just, you know, get resurrected. So they've suffered death and then they come back.
Cool. But they're not like zombies or something.
They're not zombies.
They're alive again. Yeah.
No, they're very much alive.
Cool. You've given it a lot of thought.
Yeah. When you're with a character, as George Lucas said, when, you know, it's kind of like a marriage. You have to be in love with this thing for at least 2 or 3 years, or ultimately for the rest of your life. And he was talking about movies, and in that particular case, Star Wars. But it's very accurate. I mean, when you're a creator, it's like you realize how much you've poured into this project. And because I've spent longer on it than most other writers, I think it's because I got this like Bible, a mile wide and twice as long, of just stories that I'd like to tell. But the problem is I've never had an artist who was willing or even affordable to continue working on the project with any kind of enthusiasm until Troy came along.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. You got such a good artist.
I know it was a stroke of luck, and I was actually one of his first, as you heard in the stream, I was one of his first major commissions for that kind of stuff, and it just so happened that I was in the right place at the right time. And
that's really great.
Yeah,
I would think that alone would be a huge boost to the project. I mean,
some people have contributed. I mean, I think closing out. Actually, I haven't. I've actually had some. Believe it or not, I've had cash donations towards me as well. Believe it or not, like in real life. So if you include that, I've got easily like over, I think we got like $600, but we need to get 5,000. We're only like a tenth of the way there. So hope you guys liked what you heard. I mean, I could talk about this thing for hours, like villains, character stories, like the whole 9 yards, summaries of like all the crap that I've come up with. And like, I wouldn't get bored, but that's just me. I don't know if you guys want to hear about it. Or if you guys have any comments or what you guys would like to see, you know. I'm actually, or even just the chat. I mean, whoever, I don't know how many people are in here, but
absolutely. You know, the chat's always welcome to weigh in if they have any questions or anything they want to contribute.
Lethal Lightning, Ash on Comics, Edward Brewer, D Lunar Fox, whoever's still here.
Yeah. Well, I know there's 7 people watching.
All right. Well, if you guys, let's open up the floor. Let's take some questions.
I know Lethal was driving, so he might not be able to type anything.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. Oh, they're just talking about Troy's art, which is a good thing.
Oh, yeah. Troy's art, as always, like I said, he hasn't steered me wrong ever since I saw that original cover. When I saw the original cover, I knew what I was looking for.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I wonder if I can share my screen, and I can show you guys the cover, because I know some of you guys have not. I know some of you guys probably haven't clicked the link, but in case you haven't, let's see if I've got it. Yeah,
I've got it. The IndieGoGo loaded up. If you want me to just click share,
that works too. Always willing to share that. That's always great.
All right, I'll screen share right here for you.
I also included it in the description box. There's a link to the IndieGoGo.
Nice.
Boom.
So people listening after the broadcast will find it there.
Yes.
Here we go. Yes. Here we go. So we can see your screen now, Ninja.
All right. So you guys are all looking at this. This is some beautiful art, of course. Yeah, I have to say, this is something too, man. between the description of the writing that you guys are telling me and the art, yeah, you got fantastic team behind this book.
I hope you guys back it. I mean, I know that DC here has backed it. That's actually my favorite picture. There's actually a story behind that because originally that page was actually just a flat splash page. There was no additional insert panels, and it was just Charger laid out. And I looked at that and I went, my first reaction when Troy sent me that, I went, that is the story of my life. Like, I mean, we've all had those days where you just feel like you've been laid out. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then I went back and read the script, and I was like, he just way he spaced it when he added those inserts. The panel breakdown was like, I didn't even have to do it. Like I wrote on page, and he was able to make it better than what I had described in the book, and we were able to get some stuff. Actually, maybe I'll just maybe for a little treat for you guys, if you guys are okay with that. I will actually share a preview of what is actually being said on that page because I don't mind. If you guys want to jump over to my screen, I'm going to share in 3, 2, 1. Not that page. Not that page. Here we go. There we go.
Oh, I was going to see what was on your desktop.
No. I have dual monitors, so you wouldn't be able to see everything anyways. But
Okay.
Here we go. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit.
Oh, you've got the text on there now.
Yeah, this way. Yeah, this text actually has been done by Catherine Ellis. She actually has a comic book of her own called Crank Rats, and also I think it's Nyx. Yes. So she has her own project. She does her own stuff. She also did the art for the avatar that you guys were seeing earlier.
Yeah, I like that avatar.
So a lot of the chibi art she's actually responsible for, but I don't know if you guys can read this, but if you guys are full screen, I'm not sure. But the caption reads, if my life were a movie, people would be wondering right now what the hell just happened, which I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys were. To be fair, my life's been going so fast in the past few months alone that I've been barely able to keep up myself. The short version being, boy gets superpowers, boy becomes a superhero, boy gets tricked into working for a homicidal billionaire who turns out to also be a cyborg, and finally, superhero lies face up in the concrete. At least I'm not quite dead yet. So there's some good news, I think. The long version, however, well, that's another story entirely.
Interesting.
And that leads us into the book, into the main part of the story proper. So I was actually shocked because when I was originally captioning this, I was thinking of the breakdowns. But once again, I have to give a lot of credit to both Troy and Catherine, not only for the spacing out the page, but also like this is a creative use of the breakdowns. I mean, this is in black and white, but when you see this in color, you're going to just see the captions just kind of fading across the screen, kind of like in a Kingdom Hearts kind of way, where like how the game began, it just fades in the unspoken dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was mentally thinking that when I saw what she had done with the lettering, and I was like, I as the creator was blown away.
Yeah, she really knows what she's doing. That's kind of an underused thing in comics. Like, you look at the older stuff, like when Stan Lee passed, I was looking at a lot of his stuff. He used to do that all the time, too, where you'd have the text, but it wasn't necessarily something someone was saying.
Yeah.
And it seems like in modern comics, people always feel like everything has to be said to be in text.
Yeah. Whereas these are clearly in his head. Like these are clearly what he's thinking, but it gives that kind of ethereal quality that we're not quite sure of what to do. And I was like I said, and as the creator, I was able to find like just new avenues as I was working with them to display this on the page. And also like, I just really love how Troy was able to take the suit design because I worked on it and then I gave it to a couple of people. Then I finally gave it to Catherine, and Catherine designed the overall texture of the suit. And then Troy took it to another level that you see here today.
Yeah.
So he was able to just just little subtle details, like the chest symbol, like, you know, where it's placed and how it's battered, like the shoulder guard, how it's completely annihilated.
I like the car kind of car feel to it, like Charger. Because his dad was a race car driver. Yeah.
Actually, now, this was actually... I actually forgot about this. I was reminded of it a couple years ago, but I was reminded that when I created the character, there was a show called NASCAR Racers. And the main character's name was Mark Charger McCutchin. And I went, oh, I guess that's where I got it from. Oops. But
That's cool.
yeah, and so I did a slight change and changed the father's name to Marcus Charger McCutchin, which is so kind of just to kind of have the continuity of the names, because before he was indicted with all the claims of harassment and whatever, you know, you name it. Before he was indicted with all that, I was shown by a guy named, well, Eddie Berganza. You guys remember him?
Really?
Yeah, Eddie Berganza suggested I use the name Matt McCutchin because now, spoiler alert, Wes Collins is not actually my real name. It's a pen name.
Yeah.
Because it is taboo to use a name that sounds close enough to your actual name in comics. But Eddie Berganza, and I was going to change the name, but Eddie Berganza suggested, well, your name already sounds comic booky to begin with. Don't change it. But then I heard about the taboo, and I was like, okay, so where do I go? So I compromised and created the name Wes Collins. And so that is the name you guys can know me as. I will still be known as Wes. And so I kept the name, and that's where we are today. And
yeah, I've found in the modern age too, with just the internet and everything, it's wise not to put your real name out there.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that at the time when I did it. It just kind of circumstance kind of had that happen.
That's so crazy though. Would you meet him at a convention or something?
Pardon?
The Berganzi, where'd you meet him at?
I met him at Fan Expo in 2011. So this was like 7 years ago.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy.
Oh yeah, it's like this is back when DC had booths. Now they had a booth at Fan Expo this year, but for like a 6-year span, DC did not have a booth at the con at all. Like there was just nothing. So there was literally nothing. It was completely shocking.
Typical snotty DC. We're better than you.
Right.
Yeah, it was just complete.
At least DC had a showing at San Diego Comic-Con this year. Marvel didn't have crap.
Oh, really?
No, I did not.
Nope, they didn't show up with Captain Marvel, and DC was there with Shazam and
Aquaman. And I'm actually excited for Aquaman. I am not, however, excited for, believe it or not, for Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, I don't
What
care
is that?
about
I heard people saying it's crap, and some people are saying it's good. And really, shaved side of the head. If I see one more character with the shaved side of their head, I'm gonna freaking well. I mean, really, can't you just give her a normal freaking haircut? You know, girls have normal haircuts. Even girls who are like,
you probably don't want to see
cool
Rachel
shit.
then, because Rachel does have the side of her head shaved.
I never seen Gwenpool with the side of her head shaved. She's
No,
just like a
yeah, but
normal
yeah, with
haircut.
Spider-Gwen. And then you
Yeah.
probably shouldn't see Rachel Reed then, because she actually does have the side of her head shaved with a long side bang, red side bang on the other side.
It's not attractive. I'm sorry. Even girls would probably say it's not attractive.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the punk rock thing, though.
it's the punk rock thing. But that was deliberate. And then, of course, over the series, as she becomes more and more, because she has an arc of her own where she undergoes, ironically, the same thing that Charger did, but in a slightly different way. So over the course of the series, she starts growing her hair normally, and so it'll start to mellow up. But at first, when you first see her, she's full blown punk rock. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
cool.
it was not a dig at, like, you know, the current, you know, identity politics, the feminists, or whatever you want to call them, NPCs, SJWs, whatever. Wasn't a
Well, I
dig
used to be into that kind of music too when I was a youngling, punk rock stuff. So I know what you're talking about there, like the Distillers, and I saw you were saying Green Day on your IndieGoGo, stuff like that was good. But
actually, Green Day I was listening
I'm
to
not angry anymore.
I was listening to a lot of Green Day when I created that
got
character.
too old to be that angry, but it was some good stuff when I was an angsty youth.
And I think for that kind of character, the idea of him overcoming that angst and that sense of self-righteousness to becoming an actual hero, I always find that much more of a fascinating concept than, you know, and I mean, and that's actually I think that kind of comes from my love of the TV show Smallville.
Okay.
And Smallville, you know, obviously is the story of Clark Kent becoming Superman, but he was the angsty kind of outsider for most of the series run.
I'm kind of sick of that trope, to tell the truth. Like, they did that in the Dragon Ball Evolution movie, and in the actual comics, Goku would be the kid who'd make friends with everybody, even the bullies. He'd beat the bullies up, and then he'd want to be friends with them, and then they'd be friends and they'd be hanging out.
What's interesting is that Yeah, but what's interesting is that Superman, Clark Kent, that Clark did actually this in Smallville. Clark did the same thing. Ironically, he was the outsider, and people, were kind of antsy towards him. But then he made friends with like everybody afterwards. It was really kind of a interesting dynamic that they played with that. And it's funny you mentioned that because that's what Smallville did. Like he was the outsider, kind of not fitting in, and that's what Clark really was. And then, but he was still a nice guy and always trying to do the right thing. And that's something that I saw, and also Ultimate Spider-Man did that, and it was kind of something that I felt was it's actually missing in a lot of modern comics. They just want to skip ahead to either just he's a upstanding guy, he's an angsty douchebag, or he's an activist, or she's an activist, or Z's an activist, whatever you want to go with.
Yeah,
it's like Zimmons or whatever. The point is that like they don't want to take the time and go and find something. They just want you to just jump in it and expect you to like it. And and it's not just superhero comics. I noticed that with a lot of indie books too. Like not every indie book. I mean, I'm not talking about like the guys who are in the IndieGoGos currently, but like a lot of books that I've seen on, shelves these days, they seem to be skipping bits and pieces, and just they want to show you what they think is cool and not really make the inroads of how you got there. And that was kind of something that I always felt and that's what I wanted to bring back to Charger, the idea of something that's just classic. It's like the whole idea was it's just a classic superhero story. And that was all I wanted to tell. It wasn't really, I didn't have any other greater ambition.
It's very character driven.
Yeah. It's very character driven. It's all like I did create scenes like I always asked. I wrote this, and there was an art. Actually, I got interviewed for Bleeding Fool the other day, and that went up. And they asked me, "What do I look for when I'm writing?" And I said, "Well, there's one thing I always want to see. One thing visually, like that visually excites me as a writer, and then I want to ask myself where is the character right now, like in the immediate situation, whatever he's in, and what's the villain going through." And because every comic book's got a villain in one capacity or another. And so I wanted to see, well, how do they all fit together? And so that was how I did that. There's Ash on Comics. Is this crowdfunding exclusive or plans for other distribution later? I would hope first. I need to get it crowdfunded first, and then we'll go from there. But after the book is actually funded and out there, I was hoping to get it, out to publishers. Alterna, Wicked Publishing apparently is making some rounds. Antarctic Press. Hopefully get it out for greater distribution. I was gonna, much like Wanpool, I was gonna put it on Comic Central, and all that other stuff. But the one I was gonna put on Comic Central was the digital copy, so it'll be black and white. That was the one distinction I wanted to make between the digital and the hard copy. So if you wanted the full color, which costs more, you're gonna buy the hard copy. But if you want it fast, you want it now, then you get the black and white version, which is a digital copy.
That makes sense. Since you have Troy on board, you could probably, he knows how to do the Comic Central stuff. You guys could probably get it on there fairly easily, I would think.
That's my hope.
I bet you can.
Oh yeah. Because it's one of his books, it's one of his stuff. Actually, he actually, now there's a couple of art pieces. Actually, I'm going to show you something for fun. He actually, to promote the book, how many of you guys actually know of Wanpool? Not just what you guys linked, but how many in the chat actually know about Wanpool?
Yeah, I've seen it around on Twitter once in a while. He's like a fat guy dressed as Gwenpool, right?
That's what he looks like. The gist of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that's all I know about it. That's
it. Big fan.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I'm going to share my screen again. What he did, come on, there it goes. Is to promote Wanpool, he also put Charger in the promo, and wow. This is one of the pieces he did to promote his book, but also to promote Charger as cross promotion.
Dang, that's cool.
That's pretty nice.
So, I don't know if you guys can read what it said, but because the joke was that Charger was turned into like a Justin Bieber overnight instant celebrity, right?
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Well, do you guys remember what happened to Justin when he was a teenager? All these like 40-something women trying to get in his pants, which was really creepy.
Really? I didn't know that, but it doesn't sound surprising.
Well, that was, and of course, as of late, there have been a lot of, high school teachers getting busted for sending their nudes to teenagers, which is really gross. So it all synced up. And so he did this to because One Pool, for anyone who knows, is a straight up satire of the comic book industry and the comic book genre in general, like the superhero genre in general. Mm-hmm. So he just takes the piss out of just about everything. And it's one of the funniest books I've ever read. And so when he did this, I had a what I call my Julius Schwartz moment, because anyone who knows the story of Neil Adams, does anyone know the story of what happened when Neil Adams drew the book, the cover for Green Lantern, Green Arrow, where Speedy was injecting himself with heroin? Does anyone know the story behind that?
I'm not sure.
Drugs?
Yeah, it was because Neil wanted to talk about drug use, right? But drug use was a taboo because of the Comics Code.
Mm-hmm.
I have actually some conversations about the Comics Code and how we're in a new Comics Code era. It's just that the ideological Puritans are the ones who control the Comics Code these days. They just don't call it that. And it's funny because they're so afraid of the Comics Code, yet they are the Comics Code. Go figure. Anyways, Neil went to Julie because this is back when what was on the cover would actually happen in the book, right? It would start the story. And so he took it into Julius Schwartz, the editor at the time, and he plopped it on his desk and said, I want this to be our next issue. This is just after Stan Lee did the Spider-Man drug issue, right? And then Julie looks at it and goes, Gah! Like he throws his hands up and literally throws the picture across the room and goes, what the hell? Obviously he liked it, and so they did put through the book. But I had the exact same kind of moment when he put this up. He said, "This is what I want to post," and I went, "Gah!"
You weren't into it at first, huh?
No, I was shocked. I went, "What the hell?" He really went there. So
I believe it.
It was like I was just shocked that he was willing to go there with the character, and I was like, okay, I'm okay with that. Like I ultimately was okay with it, but I was just completely floored. And also, Nerdettes, Tristan, hi yo.
Oh, did she make it?
Yep. No, she's in the chat right now. She says, "Say hi from work. Could not make it."
Oh, nice. Thanks for being here, Tristan.
Well, it's actually a shame that I didn't get to meet her on chat, because I'm liking a lot of her stuff recently. Her taking the piss out of Brentfamous and people like that.
Oh yeah, that's always a lot of fun. Well, somebody has to, right?
I wouldn't know about that, but more power to you, I say.
Yeah. Well, you have a campaign going. You can't really make too many waves in the wrong ways.
Well, like I said, it's also not my place. I'm just a guy who wants to make a book, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have a vision, and
yeah, I've got opinions. We've all got opinions, but it's not my place to lean one way or the other. My whole thing is just to put out a superhero book that people are going to like, So, and I hope that people back it. I hope it makes my job a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't make it all the way, then I gotta foot the bill myself, and that's just going to take longer. And I would like to have this out by April 2019. I just because I don't want to be like some of these backers who have showed up at Kickstarter who raised like hundreds of thousands of dollars, but took 5 years and didn't give them anything. I didn't want to be that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we've seen that all too often, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I've seen it.
Black. Oh, sorry, I had a sneeze.
Black. I thought you were being attacked by something.
No. I'm just, remember Black? I think that's what it was called. The superhero black people.
Black AF or something different?
Black AF.
Yeah. The comic that
was AF?
Only black people had superpowers.
That's it.
Black. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. It's Black AF.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I thought it was just called Black. I didn't know it had the AF at the end.
They had to add AF because they realized they couldn't trademark the word black.
Oh, okay. I read the first run of it, and it had some interesting, it had an interesting premise, but it just couldn't sell me. Like the idea that a whole aspect of society based on their skin color has powers, and that's a cool story. You could do something with that, but I don't think he did enough with it, or he just, I don't know. It was interesting, and then apparently he didn't finish it, or he had a heap of backers and he hasn't done it. He hasn't finished it yet.
I
heard-
thought that the book. I thought Kwanzaa put the book out by now. I thought he did.
He had a
I don't
couple
know.
issues.
Yeah, I don't know. I heard, and then he was like giving EVS a whole lot of shit on Twitter, and then people were like, "Yeah, you haven't even pulled your finger out, mate." So maybe you shouldn't be saying anything. I don't know. I just what I read anyway. I do remember reading it, and it's okay. I mean, it's not going to change the world, but it's a good premise. I just think he could have done more of it, but you know, what do I know?
Like I said, the thing is, I'm not. That was kind of the difference, that they wanted to write their book and they did their book, and that's cool. I mean, you guys, they want to put their, political ideology or whatever in comics and play those concepts. That's fine, but I'm not interested in that. Like, I'm not interested in trying to kind of say, I'm going to make this political statement because political statement. It's like, no, I want to tell a superhero book. I mean, the fact that like literally I'm catching all of, the fact that I'm catching all these kind of all this subtext within my own work is just an afterthought. That's kind of the point. If you can understand the subtext, if you could see subtext or make a correlation within it, that's fine. But I don't think as a writer, I want to go out. I want to be the one who goes out and says, I'm going to make this, I'm going to here to make this stand on this issue. No one cares. All you got to do, if you want politics or whatever, all you got to do is turn on the internet. Just turn on your Facebook feed, turn on your Twitter feed, go to YouTube, whatever. It's everywhere. Like, it bleeds everywhere. Headlines every 2 freaking feet. Not interested.
It's good to have some escapism for that sake. That's why, I try to get away from that stuff when I play video games or read comics. But when it's freaking staring you in the face and as if you're Batman or something.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I'm not like, except like I didn't want to kind of, I mean, even when I was like tempted as a writer to put in characters that would be the antithesis, like, of what I, would be in real life would be against, I caught myself and I went, that's not the book I want to tell. That's not the story I want to tell, because there are people who would share this and who actually would otherwise be fans of this. And I'm not trying to alienate people as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
We want those dollars, those dollary dues.
Yeah. Well, it's about, you want to have a wide enough net to fund the book to begin with.
Besides, like, unlike Marvel.
For a second, did I miss? Is there going to be a crossover between Juan Poole and Charger at some point? I think I might have missed that if you did address it.
I do know that Troy plans to have Charger get mentioned in One Pool #2. But I did say to him, it's like, if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna have a character do that, then it would be a Charger that's already established, versus, because what we're doing here is the origin story. We're very much starting from the beginning because it's a new character, new IP. I didn't want to kind of draw people into the middle of it, so to speak, even though that's kind of what I do in the first issue, but it's within 6 pages, then we go back to the origin. So I very much wanted to tell the origin of who he is and how he came to be.
Is this actually like taking place a couple years back?
No, it's the whole first arc takes place within the span of a year. So it's about the first 7 issues, and half of that is Charter spends in a coma.
Okay.
So we actually skip ahead 6 months from when he gets his from the accident to when he gets his powers. There's a 6-month time skip, and then because he's been in a coma, and then he comes to, and then the whole remaining 5 or so issues take place over the span of 6 months.
You've got to have a whole page of just him laying in bed, just like panel of him laying in bed.
Well, actually, there are some breakdowns of there actually are some scenes where you see him in a bed or in a bed, or waking up. There's a lot of kind of metaphors for that. In fact, I actually did notice that a lot of my writing tropes, that could still happen, Ash, on comics. One Pool cameo and Charger, that could still happen. And like I said, that's up to Troy, though. I mean, it's his character. He wants to put him in the background. That could totally happen. Oh, fuck, now I lost my train of thought on that. Oh yeah, like I've noticed this in a lot of my writing. There seems to be a trope of, a lot of my origin stories, if you will, they begin with a character waking up from a bad dream, and the night before, and the scenes immediately following that are usually a high octane action scene or a big grim noir thing. And it's like I have noticed that this Charter's not the only project I've worked on. I've worked on other stories in the last like 13 years, but I have noticed that's become a trope of mine. That I will have a big kind of action set piece to start the book off, and then it immediately follow. We go to the perspective of the main character, and they're waking up from a dream. So I find that kind of funny. That's kind of an amusing thing. And now I've kind of spoke myself into a hole. Anything else?
No, it's all good. Sounds like you've really got it well planned and thought out. You know exactly what you want to do with the story and the characters. Did you know around how long the book was going to be, like page-wise?
The book, each issue I wanted to be about 32 pages. I didn't actually realize that I was oversizing the book at the time. I just thought 30 pages was a pretty straightforward kind of thing. It's run of the mill, but I didn't realize that by today's standards, that's considered oversized. But then in that case, people get more bang for their buck, so to speak. Especially considering, we live in an industry where the IndieGoGo campaigns are like selling like $25 for 64-page books, right? That's like I'm looking at that going. I wanted to downsize the price and the cost to justify them, but the thing is, I can't downsize it all the way, but I wanted to downsize it just enough that people would be interested. Unfortunately, we're still only at 514 on the campaign, so if anyone, Ash or anybody would like to back it, don't forget to click the link. I was actually originally going to do this as a graphic novel, because I wanted to, at least I wanted to do it as a series of graphic novels similar to that of Scott Pilgrim. And because he did Brian Lee O'Malley did multiple volumes, he did 6 volumes, but they were all book sized, right? So I was thinking to doing that, but then I looked at the cost, and then I realized it was cheaper to do it in the floppy format. So I took the same story and just cut it up into a floppy. And then I started learning after that, I started on issues 8 and onward, I started learning how to break it down more and more into single issues or 2-parters instead of 6-issue long story arcs and compressed storytelling, which Bendis is notorious for. And that's something, as I've gotten older, I've started to realize has become a bit of an issue. It's a lot of writers are coming from young adult writing or just people like Brian Michael Bendis, and they all tell decompressed storytelling. Nothing there are entire issues where nothing happens, and those were not the comic books that I grew up on necessarily. Oh yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man was, sure, but there were a lot of other books on the market that I grew up with that weren't necessarily that. They had ongoing subplots and story arcs, but there was always something going on in the actual, book.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
So that was just kind of why I was glad to go back to the floppy for Bendis' garbage. I'll admit, let's just say I don't like Bendis on Superman, and I haven't really liked any Bendis stories since 2010. So that's all I'm going to say, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
I definitely don't like him on Superman either. I can't wait till he's done.
Obviously, he's
Lex Luthor of comics. That's Brian Michael Bendis.
He really is. He even looks like Lex Luthor.
He does. Oh my God, he does.
Yo, direct from Kingdom Come. He came right out of the pages and right into our lives.
All right. He's probably got.
And who wrote Kingdom Come?
Yeah. Another huge stinker.
So you mean to say that if we really think about it, Mark Waid created Brian Michael Bendis as playing Lex Luthor.
It all makes sense now.
All I gotta say is I need a time machine so I can go back and then go to Mark Waid and go, "You monster!"
Stop him before it starts.
It'd be worth it.
It'd be worth it. The thing is, I don't want to be Barry Allen. I don't want to fuck up the timeline.
Oh yeah, might be unintended consequences.
Yeah. Are we hating on Kingdom Come now? I like Kingdom Come.
Oh no, we love Kingdom Come.
We're not hating on the actual book. We're talking about the people behind the scenes because of how they treat everybody around them.
Okay, so it's something I've seen. People, I'm not a fan of Wade. I think he's a twit. But I still like Kingdom Come. As people seem to like go, oh, no, I don't like that. Like there was so much hate for Face Off for a while. I was like, why are you hating Face Off? Oh, because Mission Impossible 2 wasn't that good. But Face Off is still an awesome film.
I mean, I guess the same thing could be said about what's going on with a lot of people for Into the Spider-Verse, because the director came out and he did that whole, I support Antifa. You're all horrible people. You're all the big dead bigots and all that other stuff. And even like that was a whole kind of thing. And a lot of people straight up say, even the Quartering, for example, said like, I'm not going to see a movie to support that director. You're kidding, right?
Whole Quartering. I can never decide with him. Like, is he a gamer or a political commentator? Like, is he
or both? I'm not sure.
Or both. Like, does he just see what's trending and talk about it? I never can. His content's all over the place.
I used to watch him for the D&D drama stuff because I'm addicted to internet drama.
Yeah, right.
But after a while, I kind of just whatever. I like when Count Dankula did his like D&D thing. He's like spreading the cards around, and he goes, "Oh crap! Now I have to pick that up." You idiot. So, but no, I used to watch him for the drama. But yeah,
Actually, not everything is DC. It's funny because I spoke. DC actually came onto the Sportman stream when we were talking about Charger the other day, and we straight up said it's like Charger actually. Like when I was conceiving the character, and as time went on, I actually pictured him more in the DC universe if he were to ever jump ship, so to speak, that he was a Marvel character. Even though there are a lot of inspirations from Spider-Man. I always kind of really felt like he was more of a DC character. And I actually created the character. I even revised a backstory of Charger in DC Universe Online, because back when DC Universe Online first launched in 2011, there was a contest that DC was doing, and where you could actually submit your character with their backstory to then be used in their comic book at the time, DC Universe Online Legends. They had to sign over all the rights and all the other stuff. So I took the character and changed the names and changed the costume slightly, but it was essentially the same character, right? Mm-hmm. And that obviously never got used. So as such, the character, the copyrights are mine again. So no one ever used it, right? I mean, yes, I actually read the fine print, but so they never used the character. But it was like I took that character, and I was funny because that's actually what I did. I actually put the character, or a version of the character, in the DC universe. I changed the backstory to make him older. I aged him up. I said, oh, all these events happened years ago, and all this other stuff. And he changed his name, and he's got all this other stuff. It's just. And then I thought, when I realized that I could use those characters again, I went, why don't I actually do that? And so I started exploring the idea of the multiverse and alternate versions of characters, because this is also around the same time that Bendis was still on Spider-Man, and he did the Ultimate Spider-Woman being a female clone of Peter Parker. So when he did the female clone of Peter Parker, I actually am one of the few people who actually likes that idea, even though I know it's not Jessica Drew, even though she calls herself that. But I don't know. I liked it. There was just something weird and odd about it. And so I said, well, what happened? What if an older Charger, but it was a female, came to this universe and had to mentor the younger male version of Charger? And then I started traveling down that rabbit hole to see what would hell happen. And now I kind of feel I've done a story. I actually spoke about it at length on the on Sportman's chat. I don't know if people want to hear about that though, because it's a doozy, or if they want me to save it for when it comes into a future issue.
So, like, what's everybody's difference between a Marvel and a DC character? Like, how do you distinguish them?
Francis Manipal, who actually was one of my guest instructors in college, he actually, in Francis Manipal, at the time he was working on New 52 Flash, and he said this. He said, DC characters are characters you look up to. Marvel characters are characters you look at. And what he means by that is that DC characters, you can't always necessarily relate to them because they have feats and powers and lives that are or for the most part, they're idealized. Yeah. You have the perfect reporter, the billionaire, you know, the activist billionaire, the test pilot, you know, things like that. You know what I mean? It's like they have these amazing, for the most part, not everyone, but for the most part, they have the dream jobs and everything ultimately seems to go well for them. And they're characters that you look up to be and you are inspired by. You are inspired to be Superman. There's no way you could be Superman. Like he's Superman. And Batman. It's like Batman, yeah, he's human, but he does all these obscene and insane things that you're like, no one man can do all those things. It's impossible, you know? And it's like, so... And yes, and so whereas Marvel characters, they're real people who got in weird, strict situations and got superpowers. They are people you relate to. They're the people that, you know, you see yourself in that character. Whereas DC characters, you don't see necessarily, you see things that you want to be. Where it's like where you can, you know, whereas Marvel characters, you see what you are. So example, Daredevil is my favorite superhero, and he's my favorite Marvel character. I relate, but I don't look up to him. I relate to him because I also have a disability. And because I have a disability, I see the world in a different way. I also know what it's like to be bullied and beaten down by the world and being forced to just constantly shoulder it and get back up, no matter how many people, you know, do these things. And with, you know, that's kind of how I've always been. That's how I've seen it. I've always also been a bit of a loner. So, whereas, you know, my favorite superhero is Superman, and he's the complete opposite. Superman, you know, he's the guy that you want to be. He's the guy who has a 9-to-5 job, goes home, makes love to his wife, flies off, stops an alien invasion because it's just the right thing to do. And then he comes home, cracks open a beer, and then he just, you know, hangs out with the dog on the farm. You know?
That's the way to do it.
Like, yeah,
well,
it's like
Spider-Man feels like anyone could be him. Like
yeah,
I was playing some Spider-Man, and it just feels like maybe I'm Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I mean, all of us have the tropes of Spider-Man, trying to make rent, trying to ask a girl out on the date, you know, and not get through a tongue-tied, you know, it's like, and, you know, having a shitty boss who just completely rags on you every 2 bloody feet, you know, always being late to things. It's like, you know, it's, you know, and, or sometimes doing the right thing means you're going to get shit on by everyone else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So everyone can be Spider-Man. It's like anyone can do that. And that's, I mean, obviously that's the whole point of Miles Morales of Spider-Man. But I mean, I'll give Marvel this. In recent years, they have started to make Miles Morales a distinct character, different from Peter. But there seems to be this weird ass stigma that Bendis did, and that still sticks for the most part. It's that Miles Morales, or at least Bendis writing Miles Morales, wasn't any different than Peter. He was just a reskin of Peter Parker. That's it. It's like,
didn't he have different powers?
They have slightly different powers. In fact, Miles has more powers than Peter Parker. But like I said, it was only like the last, I would say 2-3 years. I would say 2 years that they've started to distinguish Peter from Miles. Like Miles is nowhere near as smart. He doesn't get his technology in the same way. His supporting cast is starting to become very different from Peter's. He has a loving family. He's got a guy in the chair. Peter doesn't have that. You know, he's also a bit of a coward. Miles Morales is a bit of a coward and has to muscle it back. Whereas Peter, you know, his quips feel like they're, you know, they don't feel as sharp. They don't feel as witty. They're just kind of like, he's just throwing whatever sticks to the wall. And obviously I'm talking about classic Spider-Man. I'm not talking about like, you know, Dan Slott Spider-Man, who is just a man-child and a pathetic waste of space. And really, 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 really made me hate the character for actually quite a few years.
Yeah, we don't count that as canon.
No.
Yeah,
you're right. Like what they had to do, he can't just be Black Peter, and that's a good thing. No one even I remember it's like a lot of people were going off. It's like, oh my god, we have a Black Spider-Man. I can relate to this character. You couldn't relate to Peter before. I mean, you're wearing Peter Parker spandex, and you're a black guy.
I'm sick of that argument. I can't. What do you call it? What did you say again? I can't identify. Me words good. I can't identify with a character because so-and-so traits. What are you talking about? Spider-Man, everybody can relate to Spider-Man for the reasons you listed. Trying to make the rent, trying to get places on time, trying to be with the girl you want to be with. It doesn't matter what color or gender. I mean, swap man for woman, or if you're a girl and you're into girl. Everybody's gone through that. Peter has powers, but he's trying to live his life. He has a loving aunt.
I mean,
or a loving
Dan Slott tried to use this argument and try to say it's like, well, you know, when you describe all these characters, like none of these descriptions required him to be white. That's because it never had to be said, number one. And if you really want to go there, Dan, there actually are two characters who need to be white in order for them to make any level of sense, at least in the context of which they were done. Batman and Daredevil. Daredevil comes from Irish Hell's Kitchen, Irish Catholic. I'm sorry. If we're going to use the argument of all Africans are black, you realize that the stereotypical Irish Catholic is a ginger redhead. White guy.
Bloody gingers. No.
So it's like, and for the record, there are white Africans. They're called South Africans. But, you know, well, there's black Irish people. Yeah, there's also there's also white Africans, so shut up. So if you really want to go there, Dan, boom. Second, Bruce Wayne, Batman. He's a billionaire who comes from old money since the 1600s. The Wayne family bloodline exists for centuries. Now, I've had people say to me in the past, like, it's like, well, you know, it's like, well, I'm like an eighth black or whatever. My family comes from old family. It's like, you know, it's like, yeah, but, you know, it's like, yeah, but you're like, how far, like, you've told me your story how many times? Like, you know, you're always the black sheep of the family. You're always this, you're always that. It's like, well, okay, so if these horrible things happen to you and you're part of that family, how would these things happen to Bruce Wayne if he was that? What would happen to Bruce Wayne if he was those? I don't think he'd be the same person, would he?
There's lots of alternate Batman, though.
There's like, I mean, Stan Lee did a black Batman, actually. That was a good example. Like, you know, actually, Stan Lee's Just Imagine line, was the closest I ever, the same feeling I got from back in the Silver Age. Because when they created, when Julie Schwartz created Green Lantern and reinvented Green Lantern and Flash, obviously he didn't, the only things he kept were that the Flash is fast, and Green Lantern has a power ring that can create anything, and the Green Lantern oath. So he only kept the basis thing, but everything else is completely different. You know what I mean? Even their universes are completely different. It's like
he changed a lot.
Yeah, Stan Lee did the same thing. Like Stan Lee example, the powers, the power's the same, like for Superman, except his planet is different. It's not Krypton. It's a different planet altogether. The only things he kept were the powers and the S shield. That's it. Otherwise, the powers are different. He comes from a different place. His name is different. His job description is different. It's all different. And it's the same feeling that from Alan Scott to Hal Jordan or Jay Garrick to Barry Allen. And then the same thing could be said about Batman. His Batman was The Rock. Literally, like he was a criminal, an ex-con who then got a job as a professional wrestler and then learned actual martial arts through, you know, just knowing all these people through his wrestling career. So he learned martial arts from these trainers through being a pro wrestler and got his money through being a pro wrestler, essentially being The Rock.
Wasn't that his wrestling persona was Batman? And that's where he got
and then he put on an actual bulletproof bat-themed costume and then actually just became Batman, protecting
that's how he got rich, too, was from wrestling. I actually like that Stan Lee took so many liberties with it. Like, if someone's going to completely reimagine things, it's, you know, it should be really different. Like, he didn't just make it a little different. He really changed things. So.
Like, yeah, and Wonder Woman comes from Aztec and Mayan fucking, you know, thing. It's like, he really went out of his way to make, like, he did what Julie did back in the 50s with Green Lantern and Flash. Like, he really went out of his way. Like, he did the same thing. And it's like, well, we can't have a black Batman. There is a black Batman. That character. It's like, you know, you don't have to reskin the character just to fit a whatever context. It's like, no.
I do think DC handles it a lot better. Like, we've got
I've always said that.
Batwoman and Supergirl, you know, all these characters that you could say are gender swaps, but really they're their own characters and everyone loves them. Like, it's not even an issue.
Now, I'll admit the way the CW uses them isn't always that great, especially considering it's always at the expense of Superman and Batman. But
yeah,
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I think Batwoman is too angry in the new season.
Oh no, she's fine. Like, the character is fine. It's Batwoman, right? Like, she's pretty. Batwoman actually.
I think she's too angry because in the comic book, I don't remember her acting like Batwoman. I mean, Batman. She should be Batwoman, not
Really?
just be Batman.
Because the
with tits.
Batwoman comics that I've read, she was Batman with tits. That's literally that was
Really?
the like
'Cause-
they even
okay.
make a running joke like they took it to Sep. It's like you're just like Batman.
I thought she was always more organic and like more kind of caring. That's Ruka's run I'm reading though, because I felt that she didn't beat them up, but it felt more like she was just dealing with them. Unlike Batman, who deals with them quickly, you know, whacks them and knocks them down. She kind of like
Depends. She'll shoot people if
that's
depending
true. She did shoot somebody. I remember that.
Yeah.
I just felt like she's more a feminine Batman, and like
They're pretty
I don't know.
different.
Maybe it's just Williams's artwork. Maybe that's how I'm depicting it.
I think that's what it's the artwork. It makes it very romantic and very kind of very soft and very features. But if you actually the writing itself, for the most part, she's just Batman with tits, and that's kind of that's kind of how they played her. And I was okay with that. Like the only like I said, I had no issue with her. My issue is how, and even Supergirl's fine. My issue is how they had to grade and basically take advantage of the fact that Superman is a really, really nice guy. Too much of a nice guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they abused that. They took advantage of that and cucked him. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't like to be very opinionated on these things, but with Superman, I'll make an exception. It's like as John Campea said this, you jobbed Superman. I'm just like, I'm sorry. It's like, well, how are you supposed to build other characters up if you're gonna have Superman be Superman? Did any of you motherfuckers watch the Justice League? That movie sucked. Yeah, it has problems, a mile wide and twice as long, except just one thing. You know the one thing it got right for the most part, although I know that there are people within certain communities that disagree with this. It had one job, fix Superman. Did it? In my opinion, yes. Why? Because after they did the whole, I remember who I am now and I'm Clark Kent, when he was back on the farm and he's hugging Ma Kent and everything's all smile, and then he comes in and he just, with a smile on his face, punches the crap out of Steppenwolf, runs over, goes and helps the Flash. Then he comes right back and beats the crap out of Steppenwolf. But does Superman get the final blow? No. Although he does use the Arctic breath. No. Aquaman knocks him sideways. Superman freezes the axe. And then Wonder Woman cuts the axe to pieces.
I do like in
the whole idea of that tell you like, well, how do you build up the other heroes if Superman's around? Justice League did just fine building up Aquaman, Flash, and Wonder Woman, and Cyborg even. So it's like, and yet Superman's right there beating the tar out of friggin', he was right there beating the living tar out of friggin' Steppenwolf with little to no issue. And in fact, the biggest moment of the movie is when he knocks Steppenwolf sideways, you hear the Superman theme playing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm also a big fan of Justice. Dun, dun, dun! It's like, yes! That's what we want. Did we get that in this crossover? No. Our Superman gets bitched by Amazo, and then he gets bitched again by a Superman who's not even Superman. It's Dr. Destiny, who friggin', he gets bitched by a guy who's had his powers for all of 5 minutes.
When Injustice, they did it right. I don't know if you played Injustice.
Oh, I love Injustice.
They built up to Superman because we know that evil Superman's regime would be over if Superman came into, but they built up to Superman. The Flash, then the Green Lantern, and then when Superman arrived, you knew shit was done. Just give up. Drop your weapons. Go to jail.
And that honestly, the Superman chapter is my favorite chapter to play, just simply to play, because you actually feel the power of being the Man of Steel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a bit of a sop, the Superman in Supergirl, isn't he? Like,
he's
really
Superman is a nice guy. He really actually is that nice, right? But they take advantage of it. As writers, they're taking advantage of the fact that Superman is not going to call them out on their shit. He's not going to sass them sideways because he doesn't need to. He's Superman.
He always tries to talk it out. That's one thing I like about Superman. He always tries to talk to the antagonist or whatever before, he sends them into the sun or whatever.
And to the crossover's credit, he did the same thing in the crossover. Like, he actually said, like, he was talking to Dr. S. He says, wearing that S is a responsibility. For having these powers, you really don't know that. You really don't understand that, do you? Like, he was trying to get him to listen to reason despite getting slapped around. But the problem is that Superman only got slapped around. You never actually had this moment, just like in Justice League, where Superman flew down, pounded Steppenwolf twice, nailed him with heat vision, then threw him like a rag doll. You never had that moment. It's like, if you had just given us one moment where Superman, you know, does something like, oh shit, it's Superman, run, you know?
Yeah.
Then
at least,
I wouldn't
at least
be
a
as
little.
mad about that.
Yeah, Superman needs to be super.
Yeah, precisely.
I mean,
Even if you have to bring him in late.
Integrated him to build up Supergirl. It's like, the world doesn't need Superman. It's got Supergirl. Ugh. Get out of here.
Yeah, Supergirl's cute as hell, though, man.
Oh, like, I like Supergirl. Like, okay, admittedly, I don't like, there are certain things about it I wish they didn't do, but they do.
I don't watch the show. I like the actress.
Yeah. Well, the show, like, the character is fine. Like, I got no issue with the character. It's just, and even the actress, like, it's all good. Character is fine. The actress is fine. Like, Superman, like, you know, is meant to be a guy who literally just, you know, you got to show there's a reason why he's, you know, the big dog. And they never did. Like, I never felt safe. Like, I never had that sense of feeling safe that with Tyler Hoechlin's take on Superman. Because he always got bitched out. He always got bitched by somebody else. Yeah.
That, you know, I think they really neglect on showing how smart Superman actually is.
Yeah.
You know, he's a freaking genius, and he's got all this tech and whatnot. I think they never play that up enough. Like, all the stuff that he's capable of.
I think there's a great scene in Action Comics 1000. It's actually also in the 80 Years of Superman comic, which, by the way, I know we're coming to the end of the 80th anniversary of Superman, but if any of you guys have not picked up the graphic, it's a trade. It's a trade hardcover. Action Comics 80 Years of Superman. It's an anthology. Do so, because if you really love the character of Superman, it literally just encompasses everything that you love about that character through select issues of the comic book. From Action Comics #1 to Action Comics 1000, it's just got, and the last story is actually written by, I do believe it was Paul Levitz, and it was literally just a chess match between Superman and Lex Luthor, and they sit down, and Superman's like, you know, it's like, you know what, you're not going to hit me with kryptonite? Oh, come now, Superman. What do you take me for? And so they sit down, they play their chess game, and they're talking. They just talk, right? And then at the end, Superman beats him. And then Lex, being a sore loser,
kicks over the board.
No. Yeah, what he does is he pushes a button and he triggers kryptonite chains that just wrap around the chair and wrap around Superman. And then Lex goes, "Aha! But you know there are other ways to kill you, Superman." And he goes, "Not when you have a mother to back you up." Click. Superman clicks a mother box that he borrowed from freaking. I think he borrowed it from Mr. Miracle. He goes, "Wait, why are you not reacting to kryptonite?" He shows the mother box. "Borrow this from Mr. Miracle. It negates radiation for a few minutes."
That's
next
awesome.
time, Superman. Next time.
What's up with DC? What's it? DC Legends of Tomorrow? Are all the women in that blonde tall? They look all exactly the same. I honestly was watching that episode and I was like, who's who again?
They have hot girls still? I thought she was.
They're hot, but they all look exactly the same.
And one thing I did notice, with the exception, no, even Heatwave, actually, now that I think about it, they're doing what I call the Once Upon a Time effect. And while it's fine for Once Upon a Time as a Disney show, is starting to become noticeable in network TV. It's like all the women have to be badass and have magical powers that can do all these great things. And all the men, even if they have powers and shit like that, have to be either a villain or inept.
Yeah. Heatwave's a joke now. And he was like freaking badass in Flash.
Captain Cold was pretty cool, but they got rid of him.
And then the Atom. I mean, the Atom was actually, even though he's a comic relief character, he was still like, you know, a genuine like force to be reckoned with.
Well, he was on
his costume
for ages. He should be really good.
He's Ray Palmer, you know.
Yeah. Right?
Our ever-loving disaster-stopping Ray Palmer.
He's not even Choi. He's the original. He's Ray Palmer. He should be pretty badass. Do they have Firestorm still?
No, he's gone.
Oh.
They did that because Victor Garber was leaving the show, so they had to get rid of him.
I think Constantine's in it, but he in the episode.
Constantine is inept. It's like
he's like in a gay relationship in the episode.
Well, actually, the thing is, you say that, but then again, him and freaking Sarah are bisexual, both of them, yet they will every Tuesday night they'll have sex with each other. It's like, what the fuck? So much for gay romance when you're fucking each other behind the scenes.
But I don't even like I don't like that Constantine. Like I love Constantine, but that Constantine, like he's horrible. Like he's not Constantine. He's just a guy in a trench coat.
I mean, it's the weird thing is it's canon with the Constantine TV show.
I like that TV show because that was Constantine. But this Constantine is just a guy who's dealing, like, you know, like, I don't know. I just don't like it. It's not. The
CW stuff, honestly, I think after, I would even say 2 years ago. I would say, yeah, it was about 2 years ago. They lost their teeth.
That's too bad. Flash is the only one that I enjoy, but because I like the fact that they're trying to be the comic books, like it would be nice to see more villains in it. Like I like to see the what's his name?
Used to have a crap load of villains. Like the second season was villain fest with like King Shark and all kinds. Rod.
Yeah, they all kind of.
It was like villains there for a while, and then it ended up with just speedster villains, like 4 freaking speedster villains. That's when I was just like, no.
Yeah, and now and then of course the last 2 seasons they do non-speedster villains like Cicada and the Thinker, and it's like, and the Thinker was lame. Like he had a cool setup, and like the thing is, but eventually it just came off like it went off like a popcorn fart.
And his wife just walked away. Woman, you should be in jail. You helped this guy nearly kill the or gunfire the whole. I love when I see that shit in movies. Like in the last X-Men movie, Magneto, who helped Apocalypse nearly kill him. He just walked away. You're supposed to be in jail, buddy. You nearly killed everybody on the planet. I don't care that you helped. I don't care if you helped Xavier at the end. You deserve to be in jail.
Yeah, there's like 30 million people in Cairo, but whatever. Just let him go.
And Harry Potter did the same thing. It's like the Malfoys are running off. It's like, you guys were part of Team Voldemort and helping him throughout the whole thing. Oh, sure, you had a change of heart at the end, but that was after you guys got tortured into freaking insanity. No, you fuckers.
She's learned her lesson.
At the last minute, just switch sides to whoever's winning.
Yeah,
it's a good strategy.
Switch to DC.
There you go.
Like I said, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Like the DC CW shows, they've lost their teeth. That's just my opinion. They've become almost a parody of themselves.
Is anyone watching Black Thunder?
Black Lightning? Fuck no. Black Lightning? Fuck no.
Oh, man. Do you ever see the Black Lightning creator on Twitter? He was going off today. He's so insufferable. I forget what his name is.
I'm not. I don't have an opinion on the guy. I feel like I wouldn't care.
Yeah, he's always arguing with people on Twitter.
Of course he is.
He was the guy who doxed himself. He had his garage sale pinned on Twitter that had his address.
Oh, you idiot.
And he's a public figure, and like the garage sale was from like 2 months ago, and people were telling him like, hey, maybe you should take that down. You're putting yourself at risk. And he got mad at the people warning him. And said, "Oh, they're threatening to dox me." And it's like, no, you doxed yourself, dude. We're just telling you to maybe not do that. I don't know.
No, I watched the first episode of Black Lightning, and what I noticed about it was some angry talk, a musical montage with the latest R&B or rap music, a little bit of him doing some action, and another music montage of Happy Family with a rap or R&B song.
So, it felt like the network version of Luke Cage.
Yeah, but Luke Cage was well written.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was one of their better shows, and then they canceled it.
Yeah, well, Daredevil was the best of the bunch, but they canceled him too. When you cancel your best show, period, it's like
they killed Luke Cage for me when they killed off Cottonmouth. Honestly, I still do not understand why
that's funny you talk about Cottonmouth. I actually thought the villain of season 2, Bushmaster, was even better.
I didn't watch season 2. I kind of gave up.
Season 2 is a marked improvement over season 1.
How they portray Bushmaster? I'm curious about that.
He wasn't a straight up comic book villain necessarily. He was a villain, yes, but he had a real motor. Like you actually saw his family life. Like he had an uncle that he loved. He had a family. They hung out of a Jamaican restaurant, and there was a real engine behind why he wants vengeance against Mariah for all the horrible shit that happened to them while they were in Jamaica. And there's like this gang war between Mariah's forces and of course the Jamaicans and all this other stuff. And Luke's kind of caught in the middle. And so he's got to stop both sides. And so, but the thing is, this guy can punch just as hard as he can. So it became a bit of an issue. And he understands, like, it's like, it feels like a villain, like you understand where the villain's coming from, even if you don't agree with it, you know? There's a real motor behind the character.
I missed out on a lot of those shows. So, I mean, I'd rather sit and do the comic thing and make my own comics anymore at this point, you know? Kind of lost a lot of interest and a lot of respect for all those, like the comics, Marvel and DC. I'd rather support you guys. I'd rather have Charger in my hands, to tell you the truth, than anything coming out of Marvel or DC.
But that's actually what motivated me to continue making the character, was that this is before the current state of the industry. This is back like when the New 52 was still at its height. And Marvel was starting to slide. So that's like, I felt even more motivated to make more stories and make the character, because I wasn't seeing superhero stories in superhero books. It's like, it's weird. It's like they had Batman on the cover, they had Superman, they had Spider-Man, but these weren't superhero books.
They keep fighting each other. Right. I'm sick of that. Hero versus hero. Civil War started that shit, and now it just keeps going. Can we actually have villains again, please?
Yeah, you know, they should have wrapped that shit up with Civil War. It should have been over. They should have gotten over it and, yeah, moved on.
But they realized that it made money, so they said they just had to bleed a stone.
And I'll throw that stone at them.
Yeah, now it's turning to a kid. Now it's
turning to what they've done is tied that stone around their neck.
Thanks, Ash. Thanks, Ash. I hope you back the comic when you get a chance. But else, we'll see you around.
Oh, is Ash heading out? Thanks for watching, Ash. Appreciate it. Ash has got a cool channel too, Ash on Comics. He reviews a lot of DC comics, so I actually like his channel quite a bit.
Don't you mean Spider-Man on Comics? Boom! There you go. There's your.
I actually like. So I got back before when I was still doing like the angry YouTube commenter kind of thing. There was a lot of things that I've spoken about, but nowadays I just realized that you can't keep up that kind of intensity and that kind of rage and fury, especially if you you want to put a product out there and show how what you do is better, because it just doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to be though that shit.
Yeah, just complaining about the problem doesn't help at all. I agree.
No. I know that there are some people in this place. I believe most of you people call him Uncle E.
Uncle Ethan.
Yeah.
Are you talking about my drug problem? Oh,
drug problem.
That's a different E.
That's a different.
But
we don't talk about that.
He mentioned that he's right about one thing. I mean, it's one thing to complain about these things, and it's another thing to not buy the product to kind of show why you're dissatisfied. That's all well and good, but people do need to know that there is a better way. If people, on the left want to buy my book and they like it, great. I mean, cool. I'm not going to say no to that. Gracias. It's like, but if people on the right are going to buy it and they do the same thing, that's also cool. I'm not going to say no to that. Sure, you could. I know I've seen people retweet our tweets or retweet our advertisements about, and they would put Comics Gate on them or whatever. And I would look at it and go, all right. I mean, you do you. It's your tweet, not mine. It's like, I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say no to the advertisement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to support this book, please do so. Money talks. I think there's a saying. There was a saying, and Ethan's got a point. Money talks, bullshit walks. So, I mean, if you really want to support, if you want to see this book get out there, then back it. I mean, DC, I know you've backed it quite heftily, handsomely. I would thank you for that. But if anyone else wants to see, where Matt winds up next after, issue 1, like there are other characters to meet, like Jax, his guy in the chair, the guy who also designs his suit. There's the band. There's the villainous mercenary Bakudan, who is essentially he wears a bomb, like a special Gambit looking suit that basically can turn any device into an explosive device. He also has a severe gambling problem.
Pretty cool.
So, you know, so that's why he keeps taking contracts, because he keeps blowing all of his money in casinos, blowing up the casino, and then freaking having to do another one.
That sounds like it would get to be pretty expensive.
Yeah, that's why he keeps having to take jobs, because he keeps cleaning himself out, because he really sucks at gambling. He's got a serious gambling addiction. So every time he blows his money, he just blows up the casino, walks off. I need another job because I need more money. Then he'll go to another casino, clear himself out there, then blow up that casino too.
Wow.
You're relentless.
So back. Not that nobody missed me.
That's pretty cool, though. I like that concept.
Sorry, I missed that. What were we talking about?
Huh?
Huh?
I guess, I mean, I'm kind of done, unless you guys want me to keep talking about more about the lore and the stuff that I've created, but that would kind of get into spoiler territory.
Oh, no. I was thinking to probably wrap it up pretty soon, actually.
Sounds good. Like I said, I'm always, not only do I here to talk Charter, I can always talk about just about anything DC related or Star Wars or stuff like that.
Nice. I will definitely have you on again, just to talk about casual stuff. What's that, man?
I was anyone's reading or read the Batman annual? Apparently,
I had dropped Batman shortly after the wedding issue.
Oh yeah, me too. Everybody's kind of given it a roasting on Twitter.
Is it really that bad?
I don't know. I've seen a couple of out of context pages. I just wondered if anyone read it.
I didn't even know the annual was out.
Where is it? Some guy was talking about it. The guy who I follow who's into Venom. Forgotten his name. I never remember anyone's name. DC, I like comics. I can't remember his name.
Oh, Eglantine.
I love comics.
I love comics. Eglantine. Yeah.
No, not him.
I know who that is.
Yeah. No, I can't find it. But yeah, some of the dialogue was kind of childish and stuff. I have to admit that. I noticed that in freaking old comics, childish dialogue, like whatever, like totally. And then they talk like that on Twitter too. How old are you?
That's
it's cringy. It'll be someone who's like 35 and they talk like they're 13.
Well, yeah, it's like, Bruce, you're pushing 40. Why are you talking like you're 12?
Yeah, that's bad writing. I'll have to look into that, though. That sounds pretty cringy.
I don't know where it is. I can't find it. It's
Ooh,
terrible.
ooh. In the words, I'm gonna have to go Goldblum on that one.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up.
DC Comics cancels Dan Diado and Keith Rockford Sideways.
Oh, one down. Well, now we just need to get Dio fired from DC. I know I shouldn't be saying that as a comic book amateur, but I don't care. I do.
No, I don't. I'm not a fan of Didio.
I don't think. I mean, you could trace every bad creative decision ever made by DC since 2003 back to him.
Most of them.
I thought everybody had
every single one. You trace them right back to him.
Yeah, Jeff Johns is good.
Okay. I'm reading his Green Lantern run, actually, Dark Blackest Night and all that, like the after that.
Jeff Johns knows how to write a comic book. He can write a comic book like literally in his sleep.
And Doug Mankey's artwork is freaking sublime. Oh, he's an insane amount of details, the way he does his action. Oh, me and my mate were freaking in love with his artwork for a while there. We got his what's it called? Major Bummer. If you want to read some Doug Mankey and all that, Major Bummer.
My dream, my dream artist, if I were to have anyone work on Charger, would be Ivan Reyes or Reese. Have you say his last name?
I always say Reese, but I don't know if that's proper. I know what you mean, though.
He also did a lot of stuff with Jeff on Green Lantern. And it's like to me, his is the quintessential superhero.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the best artists of all time, I would say.
And like, if I were to have an ideal, like his work was some of the stuff that when I was getting back into comics in high school, back into them. His was some of the early stuff that I saw, and it's just like you're just frozen by the beauty of the drawings. Like it just sticks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, now he's drawing for Bendis.
Breaks my soul. I mean, it's funny. An amazing artist working on an amazing character.
Yeah.
With a craptastic writer.
Yeah, the art's really good. If you don't read it, just flip through.
But someone said this to me, and it's very accurate. You can't have comic books are the blend of writing and artwork. You cannot tell a good story with crappy. You can you could have the greatest script in the world. If people don't understand what the hell is going on in the page, they're not going to care.
It's like that Tokyo. What was it called again? Tokyo something guy. The guy who did Dark Knight, White Knight. I forgot his name.
Sean Gordon Murphy.
Yeah, he did this thing called Tokyo something or other. I can't remember the name. The art was amazing because he is an amazing artist, but the storyline was just, I don't know. I couldn't get into it. So even though I bought it for the artwork, I ended up giving it to my friend who's more into his artwork than I am.
So that was that was very much why I was very glad that I scored Troy to work on Charger, because he really understands the balance of, you know, the art and the writing. Like, he knows how to, he doesn't let one overstep the other. And, you know, because he's a writer himself, he does understand that.
Yeah, you got a really good creative team between the three of you. It's really solid.
Work hard.
Like I said, I hope that we can get issue 1 out and funded to the audience, so that then the book can fund itself and we can see many more adventures. That's all I can hope for.
Good luck.
So.
I appreciate you guys bringing me out to the stream. Maybe next time we talk about it, or decide to talk about it or whatever with Troy. He can probably bring more artwork. Maybe Tristan will show up. Who the heck knows?
Yeah, that'd be cool. We'll definitely try and get more people. We could even do
like
it.
I said, I can talk about the book again. It's not a big deal, because, like I said, I can talk about not just what we see with the artwork, but also, like, you know, villain. Because the one thing I talked about on Sportman stream that I didn't talk really about here. I talked about some of the villains, but I didn't talk about, like, some of the villains I'm excited to see, like Dr. Tesla, Discharge, and characters like that. So I didn't really get to talk about those, but maybe next time we might.
Oh, absolutely. We could
Actually, that's the one character I'm excited to see in my own book is the character of Discharge, who is essentially Charger's Reverse Flash. I mean, the names are similar, Charger, Discharge.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is, there's the story that was a story that I was very, very, very proud of when I wrote it. And I just didn't want to, I wanted to save it for after several stories, because I didn't want to, because I realized right out of the gate, you don't want to do reverse characters so early.
Yeah.
Because it's a very, I mean, TV's bad for it, and a lot of revamps are bad for it. Like, they'll always pull up the reverse character. Even the Marvel Cinematic Universe is really bad for it. They will always whip out the hero, and then they'll whip out the reverse character immediately thereafter. Iron Man, Ironmonger, for example. Or Ant-Man, Yellow Jacket, same. Captain America, Winter Soldier, they're the same thing.
And Black Panther basically did the same thing.
Yeah, Black Panther, and then another Black Panther in a gold suit. It's like,
yeah, I could not tell the difference between those two for a while. I was like, what?
Especially in CGI.
Oh, like, that ending was terrible.
Because it ran out of money, I guess.
Thor and Loki, or even Thor and Hela. It's like they're all Asgardians. They all have similar powers.
Why would you not give the movie that's supposed to be like the woke Marvel Universe movie enough money so they can get a proper ending? And why did you even CGI a fight that you could have easily just staged with stuntmen and stuff?
I mean, granted, to Marvel, the TV side, Daredevil's credit, Daredevil actually, they waited 2.5 seasons before they actually introduced Bullseye, who essentially is reverse Daredevil, if you really think about it.
I don't know. I don't see that.
I actually kind of see
kind of that marksman type.
Well, Daredevil also hits his target with, like, you know, he'll ricochet the thing and it'll always hit its target, conveniently hit its target. So and he's got a similar skill set to Daredevil, just he's a much more trickier kind of marksman, whereas Daredevil is much more up and close. But that's the only difference. But otherwise, Bullseye can fight up close if he wants to, and Daredevil can fight at range and hit his mark every time if he wants to. You know. So but personality wise, Daredevil obviously being closer to Batman and Bullseye being closer to the Joker, you know? That's like, but if you take out their personalities and you look at their fighting styles, they're not too dissimilar from one another. They even wear similar costumes, except Daredevil's is red and Bullseye's is blue.
I didn't think Bullseye. Oh yeah, he does have a costume. I'm thinking of the terrible Ben Affleck film.
No, let's not talk about that.
Yeah, we don't like to talk that up, you know.
But
if you want to talk about good, Bullseye, go read some of that Thunderbolts.
Yeah, like Thunderbolts actually really leaned into the idea of him being closer to the Joker, just completely being insane.
Oh yeah, that was such a good run.
Yeah, that was where they really leaned into him being just a nut job.
Is that the one where Deadpool fires the rocket and it kind of flies through the car? Like goes through one window through the other?
The Thunderbolts has been a pretty long-running series.
Oh, okay.
It started way back in the 90s.
I know John Malin did some of the art on Thunderbolts there for a bit.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
he was working on that before he left Marvel.
Yeah.
But yeah, Thunderbolts was my jam.
Yeah, like honestly, like so, like when you have reverse characters, it's like I love reverse characters, I genuinely do, but you gotta earn. As a writer, I feel you have to earn that character. You know what I mean? Like when you see the hero go through so many different challenges and obstacles, like of every kind of thing, then it's like it makes the reverse character like who can stop them themselves kind of thing. It makes it more satisfying than just having the reverse character right out of the gate. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. That's just my take on it. That's just I'm sure that there are writers and creators out there who would disagree. That's just strictly my take. So.
Cool.
That's all I got. Like I said, we'll talk this, but I'm willing to talk at length about Discharge and other stuff, more Charger months. Maybe we need more artwork if we get the stream going. We're not clearly going to make 1224 by 1224. That breaks my heart. But because there was a campaign that I tried to do very early on, but it clearly didn't take. I wanted to. If anyone remembers, Mags Visaggio's Kim and Kim on Diamond sold 1,223 units, right? And whether or not you like the person or even the book, that's irrelevant. Person or the book, that's irrelevant. Point is, it didn't sell that much, right? And I thought, well, what if we sold 1224, which is one issue more than she did, by 1224, December 24th, Christmas, Eve. And so then, we actually were going to not only release the digital copy of the first issue, we're going to give everyone who supported the $15 version, we were going to give them the remaining 6 issues for the first arc, as well as a t-shirt that says, I am one of the 1,224. And a couple of other things, as little trinkets and toys, gizmos as well. But then, of course, because that would fund the book and release the hard copy, et cetera, et cetera. Clearly, we're not going to hit that goal. Hello, Jonah Arts. Welcome to the stream. And I just totally hijacked your hosting duties. Whoops.
Oh, that's fine. You were telling us about your project, so that's
true.
That's fine.
For those just joining us, we're talking about I guess I'm the writer and creator of the comic book series Charger. IndieGoGo link above or below or wherever you want to put it.
Yeah, it's in the description box.
That too. Back to basics superhero affair about teenager Matt McCutchin, bullied, picked on by the world. You know that old stuff. However, he's also the son of a champion racer and a former rising Hollywood star. And that creates problems until a freak accident gives him electric superpowers and he becomes the electric Superman. While maintaining a secret identity, he tries to look into the mystery of another dead racer who died similar to the way his father died and becomes the superhero Charger, gaining him instant media attention and becoming an overnight celebrity. He now then has to quickly learn the difference between fame and those you care about. And what is right isn't necessarily what is popular. That's basically the shorthand version of that, as much as humanly possible. But we also we talked about several things like villains, characters. If you got any other questions, if you click the link below, if you have any questions, I'm open to them whenever we're not talking about other shenanigans like, reverse characters in comic books.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you just came in late, you can check it out from the beginning too when it re-uploads as far as the stream.
Yeah, well, I'm not even sure if they can still scroll back now that I think about it.
No, not while it's live.
Okay. That's disappointing.
But in like half an hour, it'll be up, re-uploaded. It just has to process once the stream ends.
That makes sense. But
yeah.
or actually, it's written by myself, Wes Collins. It's also drawn by Troy Torres, aka Mr. Marvel. You can follow him on Twitter, and it's colored and lettered by Catherine Ellis. You can follow on Twitter at CrankRatCat or on Instagram at CO64. Cheap plug there, Cat. Assuming you're watching this, gonna watch this stream after the fact.
Absolutely. Next time too, we could have it maybe at a crazy time and get her on too whenever.
Yeah, whenever people's schedules coordinate.
Yeah, it's possible. Hard copy is talking to us from Australia, so it's just a matter of coordinating.
Don't tell him that. Oh crap!
Oh, now he knows.
Now I have to change countries.
Yeah, you do.
Actually, I have an ex who lives in Australia, so I can understand that.
Hey, mate. Hello, Governor. I'm now in London.
He speaks fast. I've heard that many, many times.
Yeah, they say.
I'm glad most of you guys have been able to catch up.
He speak fast. Wow.
Yes, I do.
Cool. Well, I guess that's probably it then, unless you guys had some final thoughts.
Nope.
Alrighty. Well, thanks everybody for watching. You can support Charger on IndieGoGo. I highly recommend it. We got a link for it down in the description box. And as always, thank you for watching and being a part of DC Fans United.